All right, everyone. Ready to dive into some grammar?
You bet.
Today we're tackling the present simple tense. And we've got some excerpts from a text that breaks it all down. At first glance, this tense might seem pretty, well, simple.
Oh, yeah, totally.
But trust me, there's way more to it than meets the eye. It's like deceptively fascinating.
Absolutely. It's one of those things we use constantly without even thinking about it.
Right. Like it's just there, working behind the scenes of our everyday conversations.
But when you actually stop to examine it, there's so much depth there.
Okay, so before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's back up a bit. Can you give us the elevator pitch for the present simple tense? What's its main gig?
Sure. Basically, the present simple tense is all about expressing those fundamental truths about the world. Those facts that are always true.
Oh, like the sun rises in the east.
Exactly. Or water freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean. Those kinds of unchanging truths.
Exactly. And it's also used for expressing habits, those things we do regularly.
So I drink coffee every morning would be a good example.
Perfect example. And she goes for a run every evening would be another one.
It's like the present simple tense captures those things that are constant and consistent in our lives.
Exactly.
Now, the text mentions something about how the present simple tense changes a little bit when we're talking about a specific person or thing.
Ah, yes. You're talking about the third person singular.
Right, that's it. Can you unpack that a bit?
Well, when you're using he, she, or it as your subject, there's a slight tweak to the verb.
Okay, I'm curious. What happened?
You add an S to the end of the verb. So instead of I walk, it becomes he walks.
Right, so it's she sings, the dog barks, it rains.
You got it. That little S is like a signature for the present simple tense, at least when we're dealing with he, she, or it.
Like a little grammatical tag.
Exactly. And speaking of tags, there are a few variations and exceptions to that S rule.
Oh, I bet. English grammar always has exceptions, doesn't it?
It wouldn't be English grammar without them. But don't worry, we'll dive into those a bit later.
Sounds good. Now, we've talked about actions like walking and singing, but the text also mentions something about the present simple tense being used for states of being.
Absolutely. It's not just about what we do, it's also about what we think, feel, and believe.
Okay, now you've got me intrigued. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. When we talk about states of being, we're referring to those things that are less about physical actions and more about our internal world.
So things like, I understand, I believe in kindness, I love my family.
Those are perfect examples. We use certain verbs, called state verbs, to describe these states of being.
And those state verbs, they're not usually used for actions. Yeah.
That's right. It would sound a bit odd to say, I am understanding you right now.
Yeah, it does sound a bit off.
Ah.
It's more natural to just say, I understand you.
Exactly. And that's because understanding is a state of being, not an action that you perform.
I'm starting to see the difference.
It can be a bit tricky at first, but with practice, you'll start to notice those subtle distinctions.
This is great. I feel like we're already starting to uncover the hidden layers of the present simple tense.
And we're just getting started. There's so much more to explore.
Okay, now you've really piqued my curiosity.
You ready for some time travel?
Wait, time travel, what do you mean?
You heard right. The present simple tense can actually be used to talk about the future.
Hold on a second. We're talking about the present simple tense, right?
Yeah.
How can we use a tense focused on the present to talk about something that hasn't happened yet?
It's a bit mind-bending, I know, but it all comes down to how we perceive time and certainty.
Okay, I'm all ears. Explain this time travel magic.
Well, when we're talking about future events that are fixed in time, things that are scheduled or predetermined, we often use the present simple tense.
Oh, I think I'm starting to see what you mean. So, like, instead of saying the train will leave at 8:20 a.m. tomorrow,
Yeah.
I could say the train leaves at 8 a.m. tomorrow.
Exactly. Because it's a scheduled event, it feels so certain that we can use the present simple tense even though it's technically happening in the future.
I see. It's like the event is already set in stone, so we treat it as a present reality.
Exactly. It's like we're bringing the future into the present through our language.
This is fascinating. It's like we have the power to manipulate time with our words.
And that's just one of the many ways the present simple tense can surprise us. There's a whole other dimension to it that you might find even more unexpected.
Okay, now you've really got me on the edge of my seat. What else can this seemingly simple tense do?
Let's just say it's about to get even more interesting. So remember how we were talking about habits and routines and using the present simple tense for that?
Yeah, those everyday things we do.
Well, it turns out you can use this tense to tell stories about the past, too.
Wait a minute. The past. But we're talking about the present simple tense.
It does sound kind of strange, but it's a trick storytellers use sometimes. It's like you make the listener feel like they're right there in the action.
Oh, I see. Like you're bringing the past to life right now.
Exactly. Instead of saying, I went to the store and saw this weird guy, they might say, I'm walking into the store and bam! This guy with a parrot on his shoulder is just staring me down.
Okay, yeah. That definitely makes it sound more exciting. You feel like you're right there with them.
Exactly. That's what the present simple can do in storytelling. It adds that little extra punch, makes things more dramatic or funnier.
So it's not just about the facts, it's about how you make the listener feel the story.
You got it. It's like you're pulling the listener into the story, making them part of the experience.
I bet this is used all the time in movies and books, right? Especially in those really intense scenes.
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Mm.
Think of those crazy car chases, or when the hero is facing off against the villain. Using the present simple tense can really ramp up the tension and keep you glued to the screen or the page.
Wow, I never thought about it that way. Choosing the right tense is like a secret weapon for storytellers. It's not just about following grammar rules, it's about how you want the audience to experience the story.
Totally. And that's what I love about language. You can paint these vivid pictures with your words, make people feel like they're traveling through time or even play with their emotions.
It's powerful stuff. I mean, who knew the present simple tense could be so multi-talented? We've seen how it can handle facts, habits, future plans, and now even storytelling.
And don't forget about headlines.
Headlines?
Yep. Think about it. News headlines use the present simple tense all the time.
Mm-hmm. You know what? You're right. I never noticed that before. But now that you mention it, it makes perfect sense. Headlines need to be short, snappy, and grab your attention.
Exactly. Scientists discover new planet. Stock market hits record high. Local hero saves child from burning building.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's like they're saying, hey, this is happening right now. Pay attention.
Exactly. And the same goes for summaries, whether it's a news article, a research paper, even a book report. Using the present simple helps to get right to the point. Cut to the chase.
Like a grammatical shortcut.
Yeah.
You get the main idea without all the extra fluff.
Precisely. And when you get how the present simple works in all these different ways, you become a better communicator yourself.
Makes sense. You can write better headlines, summaries, even tell stories that really captivate people. We could probably talk about the present simple tense for hours. I mean, it really is the backbone of so much of our communication.
It might seem simple at first glance, but like we've been saying, there's a lot going on beneath the surface, and that's what makes it so much fun to explore.
So, we've talked about a bunch of uses for the present simple, but how do you know which one is the right one to use in a specific situation?
That's where context comes in. Understanding the context is key.
So it's not just about memorizing the rules, it's about seeing the bigger picture.
Exactly. The same sentence can have a totally different meaning depending on the situation.
Can you give us an example of that? Like how context changes the meaning of a simple sentence?
Sure. Let's take a simple sentence like, she walks to work.
Okay. Single enough. What's the context?
So on its own, yeah, it's just a basic fact. But imagine it's part of a story about a woman who's trying to live a more eco-friendly life.
Ah, okay, I see where you're going with this.
Now, she walks to work means something different, right? It's not just about how she gets to work, it's about her commitment to the environment.
Right. Same sentence,
Yeah.
but a totally different impact depending on what's happening around it.
That's exactly it. Context is like the secret decoder ring for language. It helps you understand what's really being said.
This is making me rethink everything I thought I knew about the present simple tense. It's not just about grammar rules in a vacuum. It's about how those rules play out in real life, how
Mhm.
they shape the way we talk and understand each other.
And that's what makes language so cool. It's always changing, always finding new ways to express what we mean.
I'm feeling inspired to pay more attention to how the present simple tense is used in like everyday conversations or books and movies, even songs.
I bet you'll start noticing all sorts of interesting things now. It's like you've got this new awareness, this new perspective on how language works.
Well, I think it's time for us to take a little break and let all this sink in. We've covered a ton today, and we're not quite done yet. We'll be right back to finish up our deep dive into the present simple tense. All right, we're back. Thinking about everything we've discussed about the present simple tense, it really seems like it's all about, making sense of the world around us, creating order out of chaos.
I totally agree. Humans love patterns, right?
Mm,
We want to understand how things work. And the present simple tense helps us do that. It's like laying down the ground rules.
exactly. It gives us that sense of predictability, like, okay, even though life can be crazy, some things will always stay the same.
Think about all those scientific facts we talked about. The Earth revolves around the sun, water boils at 100 degrees Celsius.
Right. It's like grounding ourselves in these universal truths.
And it's not just about the physical world either. We use the present simple tense to find that same kind of certainty in our relationships and our feelings.
That's true. When you say I love you or I trust you, it feels like you're saying something that goes beyond just this moment.
Exactly, like a promise or a belief that's meant to last.
So the present simple tense isn't just about grammar. It's about expressing those deep human needs, our need for stability, for connection, for meaning.
And that's why I think studying language is so fascinating. It's a window into how we think and feel.
Well, we've definitely gone deep on the present simple tense today. We've covered so much ground.
We have. But you know what? I still feel like there's so much more to discover.
Oh, I agree. But before we get carried away and spend another hour dissecting every nuance, is there a key takeaway you hope our listeners will remember from this deep dive?
I hope they walk away realizing that the present simple tense, as basic as it might seem, is actually incredibly powerful and flexible.
Yeah, it's a real multitasker.
It's how we make sense of the world, how we connect with each other, how we even tell stories. It's more than just a bunch of rules, it's how we express ourselves.
Yeah. Well said. I hope our listeners will pay closer attention to how they use the present simple tense in their own lives, and maybe even have a little fun experimenting with it.
Exactly. It's all about exploring and discovering the amazing possibilities of language.
And with that, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the present simple tense. Thanks for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep having fun with grammar.